Well, hello. Greetings, test takers. This is Dean Denny. I'm coming to you from my studio here in fabulous Las Vegas. Pretty excited about explicating, which will what will be our fourth practice exam on the channel. But before we get started on that explication, a little housekeeping needs to be done. And so let me share some housekeeping with you. Okay, so we're going into our second year on the YouTube channel, and I think I've created for FINRA and NASA test takers the most comprehensive free supplement YouTube channel available. But one thing that comes up on the YouTube channel on the left here is that sometimes people will scare me a little bit because they'll chat up how well they did on one of my practice exams. And I have to share with them that the practice exam is not diagnostic. My practice exams are a teaching tool. They give you an opportunity to practice, drill, and rehearse. They give me an opportunity to share debrief, but they're not like a Kaplan Mastery or an STC Greenlight. So that's been a challenge, and I've done some things, taken some action to address that, which I'll share with you in just a moment. Another thing that comes up on the channel is people say, hey, Dean, can you send me or distribute to me a PDF of the exam and the answer key and rationale, or the PDF of the explications of the content outlines? And the answer is no, has been no. They'll say, can you send that to me? Now, if I had a website where all that stuff was available, it would no longer be a free supplement, right? If I send you to some website, it would be a paid supplement. And there are advantages to a paid supplement. Now, the best paid supplement I know out there in the marketplace comes from my friend Brian Lee at TestGeek. And so if you see here, what I've done is decided that to address some of these issues and make our YouTube channel packing an even more powerful punch is to have available to you a paid supplement. Both Brian's TestGeek materials content, my content, is not a substitute for your paid study materials. It's, whether they be your Kaplan materials or your STC or Solomon or Past Perfect, whatever the case may be. What we are trying to do is provide a supplement. The way Brian explains it, what he thinks his role is as a bridge between, the publishers to the test. Anyways, Brian has given me a discount code called Guru20. So there are two discount codes on the channel: Guru10, 10% off on Kaplan products and services, and Guru20, which is 20% on all TestGeek content. And there is the website there, testgeekexamprep.com. And you just put in Guru20. Now, I'm going to be explicating the fourth practice exam comes from TestGeek. It is diagnostic. So that's great. There's a correlation between how you do it. So as we explicate this thing, you might want to pause, attempt to do the question, see me explain it and see how you do. So it's diagnostic. And at the end, if you'd like, unlike the other things on my channel, if you'd like, you can go to TestGeek and you can actually buy the PDF of both the test and the answer key and rationale. Now that's $20.95, but with a $20% discount, that's $17. So I receive no compensation from either Guru10 or Guru20, but it's $17 to get that practice exam. Now, Brian has a product that he calls his study notes or class notes or quick notes, kind of like a cross between what I do in explications and Kaplan's quick sheet product and STC's crunch time facts product. I'm a big fan of it. Maybe I'll try and give you a sneak peek of that tonight in the explication, or maybe I'll save it for a separate community playlist overview of Brian's content that's available and how that works. But if you'd like to combine that with the answer key and PDF of the exam itself, it's, I think, $40, but with the 20% discount, it comes in at $32. And then probably the best investment or value is you can buy his entire content, his entire supplemental. That includes all his videos for the Series 7. And that's $100 with the 20% discount. That comes in about $80. So you might want to go on his site after the explication, see the Series 7 stuff that's available, realize you can get 20% discount and decide what you'd like to do. I think the best value is certainly the $80, which includes everything: the practice exam, the answer key rationale, the study quick notes, and all of his videos. I think there's, don't hold me to this, I think there's 15 hours of videos up there or something close to that, maybe more, maybe less. I'll certainly, when I put in the community playlist and overview, tell you exactly what that looks like. So anyways, that's the collaboration that Brian and I have. And as part of that, I said, well, Brian, what I'd like to be able to do is put your diagnostic exams onto the YouTube channel and explicate them like I have with mine. As you know, I've done 3 of my own practice exams, and so this will be the 4th. We're going to add Brian's to the mix. So let's get going on that. And here we go. So this is Brian's practice exam final, and like I say, we will be explicating that. Usually these explications come in hour and a half. So every 30 minutes, I'll set my egg timer just to let you know when we're doing that. And, they're long narrative form, but you can always hit the stop, take a break and come back to it. So, all right, number 1, a customer has $100,000. He wants a specific monthly income and has lost money in the market. So he's concerned about the protection of his principal. Which of the following would you recommend? Well, your capital is always at risk, your principal in a securities product. The only products that we have that do not expose your principal, your safety of principal, there wouldn't be securities product, would be an insurance product or a banking product. And so the answer to this question is going to be a fixed annuity. I'll comment, do my explication. I wouldn't be worried too much about a fixed annuity as an issue on your Series 7, but certainly make sure you understand that variable annuity. That's a mutual fund with an insurance wrapper. You're much more likely to get questions about ETFs and how they're different than mutual funds and variable annuities and, how those work in terms of a non-qualified retirement plan. All right, number 2, which of the following is true? Which of the following is true about a variable annuity? Withdrawals are not allowed during the accumulation period. The number of units in the separate account varies during the accumulation phase. Yeah. I think the best way to think about a variable annuity is a mutual fund with an insurance wrapper. So when you're making those payments into the variable annuity, those payments you're making are going into the separate account, which for all intents and purposes is a mutual fund. And like a mutual fund, the value of the accumulation units, which is the equivalent of NAV per share, how many shares you have in a mutual fund, that's going to go up and down depending on what the securities in the separate account do. And so B sounds pretty good. You should definitely know we never use the word guarantee. There are 2 nasty words we never use in the securities industry, and that is the word guarantee and the word approve. We never say anything is guaranteed. We never say anything is approved by the regulators. If we're going to say guarantee, again, we have to be talking about an insurance product or a banking product. The value of the separate account determines the amount of the monthly payments reserved doing. No, that's kind of a tricky one there, but what's going to happen is we're going to turn the what are called accumulation units into annuity units. Again, in the explications, it's not lecture, it's, explication. So I'll refer you to my variable annuity discussion on the channel. If you go to the channel, you'll find that discussion. All right, number 3. Which of the following would be suitable to purchase a variable annuity? A 45-year-old man wants to purchase $50,000 in non-qualified funds. He's in a 35% tax bracket, wants to minimize tax effects. Key phraseology here, in terms of suitability of a variable annuity, you should have already maxed out all the other pre-tax vehicles that are available to you, where you can use pre-tax money to fund them, like your 401k, through your employer. And that's key phraseology that the variable annuity would then perhaps be suitable. 21-year-old who wants to buy a house? No, we've heard of variable annuities as non-qualified retirement plans. A 70-year-old? Absolutely not. No, I think we could have got this with what I call the Sesame Street trick. One of these things is not like the other. So it looks like number 3 is going to be A. An investor, I love this answer set. I'm thinking about doing a whole short on opening and closing transactions. This answer set is spot on. You're going to see that if you own an option contract, that means you did, it says you own an option contract. That means you did an opening purchase. And so the way you close that out is with a closing sale. By the way, you should know each and every one of these in this answer set. If number 4 had said, which of the following is used to establish or add to a short position, the answer would have been A. If they would have said, which of the following is used to establish or add to a long position, you'd say B. If they said, which of the following is used to eliminate or reduce a short position, you would say C. And the answer to this question is D. So make sure you have mastery of that answer set. If you're making flashcards, I recommend when you're watching these explications, you have a stack of 4x6 cards or a notepad, and maybe you have make this flashcard fodder for you. If you spend the $17 to buy this PDF, you could also do what I call a poor man's flashcard, where you simply just mark or annotate the exam. And one thing I recommend you do with Brian's exam is maybe the night before, just go over the questions and the right answers, or the morning of, or maybe both, perhaps both. The answer there is D. And very much an answer set you're going to encounter on your exam. Whoa. An RR, registered rep, that would be you. I highly recommend in terms of grammar that every time you get like some acronym, you just turn it into what it is. So a registered representative recommends a variable annuity with an income rider to a client. The customer agrees and tells you he'll surrender his other non-qualified variable annuity he has with a life insurance company to purchase the variable annuity the registered rep is recommending. The registered rep should do which of the following? Yeah, the idea here is the switch seems like this might be not in the customer's best interest. And so I think the prudent thing here to do when he tells me he's going to be liquidating an investment A to get into some other, well, I shouldn't call life insurance an investment, but he's liquidating life insurance to do this. We probably should reconsider that. I think that's very low probability as an actual test question. 6, an investor informs you that he wants to save for retirement. His main investment objective is to avoid purchasing power risk and to be paid income that may outperform inflation. As a registered rep, what would you recommend? Well, none of these other ones, B, fixed annuity, Series E, money market, what's all those have in common is they're debt-denominated securities. And debt-denominated securities don't do well in terms of an inflationary environment and don't do well in terms of preserving purchasing power risk. Now, if I had common stocks in this answer set, that's what I'd be looking for, because that would be an even better answer. But you got to deal with the answer set you're given, and the answer set Brian has given us here, that's going to be our best choice given that answer set. Very important. Some of you are in your second leg of your testing journey, and some of you are going on to a 66. And in the 7 and the 66, you should definitely know that inflation, purchasing power, I'll oversimplify this, which is my job. The common stocks are good and debt securities are bad in terms of purchasing power and inflationary risk. 7, a customer purchases a non-qualified annuity for 10 grand. Now, what's important is every time you hear the word non-qualified, you should think to yourself, after tax money. That is $10,000 I've already paid my taxes on. So when you hear the word non-qualified, you should think, okay, after tax money. On your exam, when you hear the word qualified, you should think pre-tax money, zero cost base. Because if this was a qualified retirement plan of some sort, we've heard of variable annuities as non-qualified retirement plans, that would be a different answer. 10 years later, he takes a lump sum of $30,000. What is the tax reporting? Now, I think this is a very good question that Brian has for us. You should definitely know that we're going to pay ordinary income tax on the $20,000, right? We've already paid taxes on the 10 that went in there. So let me just riff on this one a little bit. So we put $10,000 in this variable annuity after tax. That's what non-qualified means. Now we have 30, we take a lump sum, we owe ordinary income. That's important. If that was if that had been an index fund, for example, and now you had $20,000, you would have been at risk for more than a year and you would qualify for long-term capital gains. And so it's a testable distinction to know that when you're getting money out of variable annuity, it's going to be taxed at ordinary income. By the way, that's true of qualified retirement plans as well. Secondly, I would know for your exam that if you do a random withdrawal, So let's just riff here on question 7. If this question had said 10 years later, he takes a random withdrawal of 10, you should know that that's going to be LIFO. That's going to be LIFO. Let me get out my annotation tool and just annotate some of these questions as we go about them. So we definitely know random withdrawals from variable annuities or LIFO, last in, first out. Okay, 8. An elderly man requests to purchase a position. He gets confused during the interview. What does the registered rep do in regard to the requested purchase? Make the purchase, call the firm to discuss what protocols should be followed with working with an elderly prospect with early onset of dementia. That sounds pretty good. We have what rules to prevent exploitation of seniors or seniors who can't competently handle their own affairs. And what we would want to do is see if our written supervisory procedures include what's called a trusted contact person. So B sounds pretty good. By the way, test taking trick, you don't use tricks unless all else fails, but too long to be wrong, right? So B might be too long to be wrong. Tell them the cell's not suitable. We don't speak with family members. If there was a trusted contact person and our written supervisory procedures allowed it, we could put a temporary hold while we call somebody and say, hey, we think there may be early onset. But given that answer set, looks like our best choice here is going to be B. I'm going to get rid of that. Try again here. There we go. A 17-year-old whose birthday is next month wants to open an account. So very testable. We do not open accounts for minors directly. So right off the bat, there's a red flag here in terms of this is a 17-year-old. By the way, it doesn't matter if his birthday is next month. He's still 17 years old. He wants to open an account with his wages. So, teenagers working for his money. I appreciate that. Do you open the account? Do you open the account? The answer here is C. Now, I think I'm not worried about Brian's phraseology here, but you should definitely know we don't open accounts for minors directly. The way we do business with minors, if we're going to do business with minors, is we're going to have a Uniform Transfer to Minors Act or Uniform Gift to Minors Act, where there's a custodian, one minor per account. The minor's tax ID number goes on it. That's how we do business with minors through either UGMAs or UTMAs. All right, 10. Don't overdose on margin. Don't overdose on margin. But you should definitely know the classical margin equation. Now, I think Brian's being kind of nice here because he gives you the classical margin equation. The classical margin equation is long market value minus debit register, debit balance. That's what you owe the brokerage firm. So you owe $70,000. Equity always represents what you would have if you closed the account and paid off the loan. Nobody's suggesting you do that, but that's what equity represents. I think the best analogy is a house, right? Market value of the house minus mortgage on the house equals equity in the house. He sells $18,000 of XYZ, and at the same time buys ABC of $20,000. Now, what I do as a margin clerk is I net those two numbers. And so, before I do that, I'm going to look and see if perhaps there is an excess equity or SMA that will take care of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare the $80,000 in equity. Let me get out my annotation tool. And what we want to do is see what is 50% of the long market value. So I'm going to times that by 50%. And we're going to figure out that Reg T on this account is 75,000. And he has 80,000. So if we took his 80,000 equity minus 75,000, this guy has 5,000 and what we call excess equity. And I don't think that would cause you any problem on the test, but that's 5,000 excess equity. And as a margin clerk, I make a special memorandum account. special memorandum to your accountant. On that day, you had 5,000 excess. So you can have that as cash, or 2 times that is what's called your buying power. So this account has $10,000 in buying power. And so as a margin clerk, I net those two. And I say, okay, so you want to sell 18 and buy 20, that's 2, and you've got buying power of 10, so you don't have to come up with any money, my friend. You're all good. You're all good. Now, I would warn you that the test, or all the test prep providers, whether it's Kaplan, Knopman, Solomon, Past Perfect, particularly Past Perfect, go total overkill on margin. I have a margin lecture called Don't Overdose on Margin, and it's all you need to pass your exam. So please don't do it. I've had people tell me they didn't get any 2, 3, 4 max margin questions. So be careful you don't devote too much time to margin. So the key is classical margin equation. Bruce is funding his 401k at 4%. He's 40 years old. He makes 35 grand a year. He came into an inheritance of 50 grand, and he wants to save for retirement. How should he best invest the money? Well, here you always want to first take advantage of all the pre-tax money and perhaps even a match from your employer. So what we should tell Max to do is, first thing is max out everything he's got available to him at his employer. And then once you've maxed out everything you have available to you, then you would consider perhaps doing some kind of an annuity transaction. Annuities have a suitability questions. One of the suitability questions about a variable annuity, it's never going to be a suitable recommendation if somebody has not first maxed out the other retirement plans, qualified retirement plans available to them. 80-year-old customer has $100,000 and is looking for safety of principal and some income, safety of principal and that. So here, I don't really care for this particular question. I'm honest with you, but looking for safety of principal would be nice. So immediate fixed annuity, period certain. 80 years old. I don't think annuity makes any sense. So by process of elimination, I'm going to go with the treasury bond ladder. Laddered portfolios is where you have bonds coming due at different times. Again, this is another question. I don't particularly like the question, but given the answer set, based on the guy being 80 years old, I don't think he needs income for life, because that would be a better deal for the insurance company than perhaps the client. 13. Which of these are considered retail sales literature? Now, the point, if it's retail sales literature, it has to be approved pre-distribution by a principal. Whether it's correspondence, because if it's not sales literature, it's correspondence, it could be approved by a principal pre or post distribution. And so sales literature here, the answer is going to be unlimited number of emails, because certainly unlimited number of emails is more than 25. So Brian, I think, is here kind of being a jerk like the real test, and trying to get you to think, well, gee, it's an email, it's correspondence. No, not so, because it's unlimited number of emails sent to current customers. And then here it says more than 25 emails. That's the actual definition. The actual definition is if it is, more than 25. So the answer is 1 and 2. 25 or less would be correspondence. And I don't know why I'm not very good at my little highlighter here. Let me give some more room to maneuver. That's pretty testable, by the way. So make sure on your exam you can distinguish between sales literature and correspondence, and then know that if it's sales literature, the key one is the more than 25. Now, if you're going to turn this into a poor man's flashcard, what you want to do is highlight the right information, right? Let's see. Brian here actually gave us what I call the principal mutual exclusion. If I take 2, I can't really take, 3. So as a test taker, but make sure you know the distinction, and make sure you know pre-post distribution on that. A customer opens an individual account to buy 100 shares of stock and tells the rep to watch the stock. The rep notices the stock is dropping. The rep calls the customer and finds out the customer is out of the country. As a registered rep, what should you do? Well, A, you should have been able to toss out immediately. We never take instructions from third parties. Unless the spouse has trading authorization, don't bring stuff into question. There's nothing in this question to suggest that the spouse can trade this guy's account or this gal's account, whatever the case may be. Unless you have discretion, nothing in the account says I have discretion, so I can't buy the stock. Sell the stock using discretion. Well, if this question said I had discretion or authority, perhaps. Yeah, you got to talk to the customer. You got to talk to the customer. Make sure on your exam you can distinguish about what constitutes taking discretion and what does not. It's the 3 A's: action, asset, amount. So if I'm going to make a decision about action, asset, or amount, B, please note, buy, that's action. C, sell, that's action. I can't do that unless I have trading authorization. Again, I'll refer you to the lecture on orders for our fuller discussion. Again, this is not a lecture, it's an explication. Contrasting agency collateralized mortgage obligations. So again, my recommendation to you is that every time you see some kind of an acronym, you spell it out. So contrasting agency collateralized mortgage obligations to private label collateralized mortgage obligations, all the following statements are true. Agent CMOs are true except, Now on the real exam, the except would be in all caps. And the reason I went back and caught the except is because I thought, that's kind of odd. I got more than one right answer here. And, that's a hint that Dean is tripped up on the except. So, yeah, if what we're carving up into various cascading cash flows, because that's what a CMOs are, we're going to carve it up to what we call tranches. Since we're carving up government-sponsored enterprise securities, they don't have any credit risk. So they're going to have higher credit rating if it's coming from an agency like GNMA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, that kind of thing. And so A is true. We're looking for something that's not true. Private label CMOs may contain mortgages other than U.S. agency securities, and that too is true. We're looking for something that is false. So, another thing you might want to do as a test-taking trick is you might want to go through each of these and just put a T or an F next to each statement. Is it true, the statement, or is it false? And then we got a 50-50, right? Because we said both of those are true. Agent CMOs, collateralized mortgage obligations, are created by investment banks. So 15 here. Private label CMOs usually have lower credit ratings, and that is true. So by process of elimination, it looks like my best answer is going to be C. C. Again, not one I particularly care for, but that's not the point where the dean cares for the particular question. 16. What should you warn a customer about if they want to do electronic communication network ECN trades after hours? After hours. Well, after the normal market hours, a lot of the professionals go home, and so that means liquidity is going to be, kind of evaporate in those after-hour trading. And so, yeah, liquidity and pricing may certainly be an issue because, the market makers and most of the people who are participants are not trading after hours. So A is the right answer. By the way, that might be a good poor man's flashcard. Remember what I mentioned about a poor man's flashcard? Let me show you again what I mean by that. So if you let me get my... You might want to, if you choose to purchase this thing for $16, you might want to just take your PDF and just El Marco out. Questions like this that I call aim and shoot, point and click recognition questions. You might want to just El Marco that out. And as I mentioned the night before or morning of, just go through and read Brian's question and the right answer and read the rationale. I think that's a good way to warm up night of or morning of. You need to make the night before the exam. You can't be doing stressful stuff. You got to get a good night's rest. So you want to do low key things. And, reading your poor man's flashcards you've made out of Brian's practice final would not be a bad kind of activity, low key. And some of his questions like that one are pretty spot on. So I think they're spot on anyways, for what it's worth. All right. So 17, let me clear up our. Which of these agency bonds are backed by the U.S. government? That is very much a test question. Here's another one, back to back, where I think if I were a test taker, I would highly recommend, if I were a test taker, that you do what Dean's suggesting, another great opportunity for a poor man's flashcard. You know, these other ones have an implied back, and we assume that if they got in trouble and asked the U.S. Treasury for assistance, that the answer would be yes. But that's high probability. I can't imagine any draw on your test where you don't get asked to recognize that GNMAs have the full faith and credit of the United States government. Very testable. I would also know that GNMAs, let's put that in there, pay interest and principal monthly. It's the only one we have that pays interest and principal monthly. Every other debt denominated security we have pays interest semi-annually and principal at maturity. So high probability that you're going to get a couple of GNMA questions. I have on the channel a whole GNMA lecture on GNMAs and CMOs. So I think it's like 30 minutes. It was a requested lecture. Might want to check it out. 18, a municipal financial professional. A municipal financial professional writes a check from a joint account that is for a political contribution. And he says that his interest in the joint account is less than 50%. How much of the check is attributable to him as a political donation? And the answer, you know, you can got to think like a compliance officer that it's going to be the entire amount. Yeah, there's not going to be any shenanigans here. Please note, you should definitely know the $250. Let me put that in there. And you should definitely know you have to be able to vote. This is called G37. You know, the MSRB has the Municipal Security Rulemaking Board. It doesn't have any enforcement powers. They publish rules. And, you know, the MSRB publishes A rules, administrative rules, D rules, definitional rules, and they publish G rules, general rules. And G37 is definitely testable. You don't have to know the rule number. They'll give you the context. Like you don't need to, they'll say like under G20, the gift or gratuity rule. So they'll give you some context on your exam about, you know, what you're looking at. Now, again, I just want to remind you that if you want to try these yourself, what you should do is just pause, like 19, just hit the pause button. Then when you've answered it, hit play again. Dean shows back up, and then you can see, you know, what kind of prowess you have demonstrated in terms of answering the questions. We played a little game on my Reddit today. Well, I shouldn't say my Reddit, our Series 7. And it was a Seattle GO bond underwriting. And then we were, you know, going back and forth. I was answering questions on, I think the thread became like 15 questions out of about munis. And anyways, very productive. And people said they liked it. And, you know, so you want to kind of, you know, riff on some of the stuff that, you know, has stuff behind it. Anyways, 19. A registered rep has already given a customer a $50 flower bouquet for her birthday earlier in the year, and the client just got a promotion. So which of the following could the customer give? It says $60 bouquet. I think this is Brian being kind of difficult. The maximum gift or gratuity that an employee of one member firm can give to the employee of another member firm is $100. But Brian, this isn't a customer here. And, you know, the gift or gratuity doesn't apply to normal deductible business expenses. And so that's what Brian's getting at here. I'm not a big fan of this particular question. But you should definitely know that the gift or gratuity rule is $100, and you should definitely know that it doesn't count normal deductible business activities. So, you know, the key here is that D is a normal deductible business activity. How often do CMOs pay dividends? You know, CMOs are pass-through of the payments that are being passed through from the pool of mortgages, and those would pay, you know, monthly. And I don't really like that question either, because to be honest with you, really it depends on how we carve that up in terms of how that's going to pay. But, you know, oh well. When should a registered rep do if the client wants to make a speculative purchase in the UTMA account? And anytime you have an answer set that says check with your principal, I mean, definitely. right? So speculative investment. I wouldn't worry too much about this as an UTMA, but you're going to get UTMA questions. You need to definitely know the Uniform Transfer to Minors Act has the kids tax ID. You definitely need to know no margin. There's no margin in the UTMA account. No margin means no short sales, because you can't do short sales unless you have a margin account. You need to know one minor, one custodian per account. So make sure you have that. Where would you see the third market? Where would you see the third market? Well, I don't like Brian's definition, particularly in this question. Let me just fix this question to my liking. The third market is going to be listed securities traded over the counter. And, off the trading floor, I think is close enough. I mean, that's kind of what Brian's getting at, is this off the trading floor. I think we could have a better answer there. Between institutional investors is going to be the fourth market. By the way, that's my little egg timer telling me we've hit our first 30 minutes. So I told you, just, when you're doing these, maybe you want to just take a break when you get to 30 minutes, come back, it'll be here for you when you come back. That's called the fourth market. There's no questions about foreign markets or primary issues, but there certainly is a third market. So the answer here is A. I would prefer the answer to B would have been the fourth market. The answer is A, but I prefer what Dean put here as a substitute answer for that one. Let's see. Let's clear that up. Let's get rid of that. As I said, I would prefer that said listed securities traded over the counter. I'll take that with Brian. Maybe he'll change some of these answers based on Dean's input. 23. A client is 50 years old and has a non-qualified variable annuity. If you're to take distributions from the annuity, the distributions, by the way, this is no different than any other retirement plan. The answer here is 1 and 2, very testable. Now, the actual Series 7 doesn't have multiples of multiples. You're not going to encounter any multiples on FINRA exams. On NAS exams, you will get the multiples of multiples, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 of them, perhaps, not a lot. But very much a poor man's flashcard. I would definitely know this. Brian's got this one spot on. So again, if you're going to make a poor man's flashcard, the way we said we go about poor man's flashcards is we spend $16. We buy this thing from Brian, and then we print it, and then we just take all the questions and turn them into poor man's flashcards. And then the night before, I just read this question and this right answer. By the way, this would be the same if it was an IRA or any other kind of a retirement plan. Uh, 24. A fund portfolio is made up of the following mix: 20% bonds, 40% preferred stock, and 40% equity. I think what I would have done here is process of elimination. It can't be an equity fund because there's bonds in it. It can't be a growth fund because there's bonds in it. It can't be a fixed income fund because there are stocks in it. And so the answer here is going to be D. It must be an asset allocation fund. You're going to get lots of mutual fund questions on your exam. So make sure you have a package. I call them package products. That's mutual funds, ETFs, exchange traded notes. Make sure you are, pretty solid on that. A registered rep must disclose what if a customer wants to buy a fund or hedge funds. The one thing hedge funds don't do is hedge. Hedge funds are organized as private partnerships. The whole point of a hedge fund is to avoid the Investment Company Act of 1940. And it's a fund made up of different hedge funds, and hedge funds are very volatile. I mean, usually when somebody says, "Oh, Dan, did you see the paper? This guy lost $300 million. I go, probably a hedge fund, probably a hedge fund. What's more important to know is that hedge funds are organized as private partnerships. They are distributed under Reg D, meaning, again, Reg D is a private placement, which means we can only have institutional investors and accredited investors in a hedge fund. That's more likely the question you're going to see. I think we just kind of had a similar question here, 26. A client wants to trade through an electronic communication network after hours. What must the registered rep disclose? And, it looks like, again, here that this idea that we may have limited liquidity and limited volume. And by the way, remember, limited volume kind of is tied to this idea of limited liquidity. Unlimited hours, well, perhaps, but not really. I mean, we're trying to go to a continuous 24-hour market. We're not quite there yet. Anyways, it's A. You can toss out D, Roman 4, by the way, by reduction to the ridiculous. That's just a ridiculous answer to be offered. 27, John has capital gains of 10 and capital losses of 15. How much of a capital loss may be used to offset his income? That is very much an aim and shoot, point and click question. And boy, you certainly want to get aim and shoot, point and click questions like that one. It's $3,000. I have a taxation lecture if you want to watch it. But angels weep for you when you miss recognition questions. The 3 styles of questions, you get a recognition, practical application, and judgment. And you can't be giving up aim and shoot. So that means I'm going to have 2,000 I'm going to carry forward as a loss potentially next year. Treasury bills interest is taxed at which level? The state would love to tax you, but can't. And the U.S. government can and will. And so the answer there is C. C. Your client lists the following sources of income. Your client lists the following sources of income. Which groups include earned income? That's you working for your money. You working for your money. So wages are you working for your money. Collecting rent isn't you working for your money. That's your money working for you. Social Security, child support is not concerned in earned income. Wages, alimony, child support, not wages and alimony. The answer here to 29 is D. Which of the following is most sensitive to interest rates? Again, this is very much a test question. And the way you can get this right is with a long and low. Long means you're going to go to the longest term. And then low means you're going to go with the lowest coupon. The coupon is going to act as a stabilizer on the price. The investments that have an income stream are going to be more stable in price than investments that do not. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go for the longest term maturity offered to me. And then the next thing I'm going to do is go to the lowest coupon offered to me. And so the answer here is going to be D. I can't imagine any draw in which you're not going to get 2, 3, 4 questions about zero coupon bonds. So make sure you know zero coupon bonds. You have to do straight line amortization upward called accretion, and know that that imputed interest, that accreted amount is taxable unless that imputed or accreted amount comes from a muni bond zero. Definitely testable. I know they're great for target date investments. Somebody who needs a set sum of money at some future date. I would know you don't have any reinvestment risk because you're not getting paid every 6 months and have to reinvest it. So make sure you spend some time on zeros because you're going to get more than one question on that. In additional offering, an underwriter purchases shares above the current market price. Here it looks like you're trying to make this thing look hot. I would think stabilization is more an issue you would address if you joined me for a Series 24. But, Brian probably has some reason that he wants to put it in here. I think that's more of a 24 issue, but stabilizations can only be done, it's a legal form of pegging. It has to be in prospectus or you can't do it. And it has to be at or below the public offering price. It's way, I think, beyond the 7, I think, personally, but, it's for firm commitment underwriting. So 32, which of the following would be adversely affected if the issuer's credit rating were to decline? Now, I like this question, not so much for the question and the answer as much as the takeaway, the intellectual takeaway. You definitely need to know that equity-linked notes, ELNs or ETNs are debt instruments. That's very testable. And since they're debt instruments, if exchange-linked note or ETF, one of the risks you have, or excuse me, not ETF, ETN, equity-linked note or ETN, exchange rate note, is that the sponsor, underwriter, or distributor won't make good on the promise to pay you the return based on the what it's linked to or the index, whatever the case may be. I can't imagine any draw in which you don't get at least one question about equity-linked notes or exchange-traded notes being debt instruments, and that the holder has a creditor relationship with the issuer, the sponsor, which is typically a financial institution. 33. You're golfing with your client on Sunday morning. He tells you to sell 100 shares of the market. As a registered rep, what do you do? What do you do? It says refuse the order. No, you've got to follow your client's instructions. Tell your client per Rule 1545, you're not permitted to take orders on business days. Place the order Monday morning. Mark the tip here like the order was taken that day. Place the order Monday morning, but use Sunday's date and time as when the order was taken. That seems to make some sense. I think, sometimes you get common sense ones. That certainly makes sense to you. Your client's retired in the late 60s, would like to review their portfolio. As their registered representative, you would most likely recommend which of the following. So they've retired, they're in their late 60s. And so it looks like we're probably going to want, I like to do on these ones like what I call process of elimination. And so it looks like having 40% in international equities is kind of outrageous. 50% international equity sounds kind of outrageous. And 30% sounds kind of, out there. It looks like, given that answer set, that C seems to be the most prudent one there. So 34, the answer is C. Listen, I did a whole brief video on this. This is stupid but testable. This is definitely on the exam. In a new margin account, key phraseology on your exam, your customer places an order to buy 100 shares of XYZ. The trade is executed at 18. As a registered rep, you inform the customer they'd be required. So the self-regulatory organization has a $2,000 minimum requirement. But if you buy under $2,000, you pay in full. So the customer here is going to pay $1,800. Now, the other version of this is between $2,000 and $4,000. The customer is going to pay $2,000. Then after this, there's no trick. So I would certainly be prepared for that. That was also on your SIE. It's on the 7, it's on the 24, it's everywhere. I have every version of that in a little, I think it's like a 10-minute little video where I go through every version of this as a potential test question. 36. A customer would like to provide the registered rep with authorization over the account. They've signed the documents and they've sent them in the mail. The customer then leaves town. I think it should be town. And the registered rep notices their stock dropping. What action may the RR take? Well, remember, this is, again, Brian getting at, you can't take discretion unless you have it, right? So, you can't do anything until you talk to them. So 36, yeah, you do nothing, right? So unless you have discretion, what are you going to do? You got to wait to talk to the customer. 37. According to Federal Rule 5130, all the following are restricted from purchasing a new issue except. So, we're trying to make sure that the clients actually get the good stuff. If we didn't have this rule, the clients would never see the good stuff because we'd keep it, for us and our friends and family and people like that. And so all the following are restricted except. So they're asking who cannot buy the new issue. The withholding rules do not apply to the wife of the CEO of the issuer, right? Because that's a good thing that she wants to buy the stock. That's a wonderful thing. She wants to put her money at risk. And it's a great thing that employees want to buy it. So, employees and affiliates are not considered, are exempt from the withholding rules. So the answer here is A. You should definitely know officer of the underwriter certainly is restricted. And you should definitely know that employee of the underwriter are restricted. You're going to get 1 or 2 questions perhaps on restricted persons. Oh my goodness. Wow. 38. An investor is long an OEX. The OEX is the Standard & Poor's Index. That's what the OEX is. December 420 call for 1,200. So I paid $1,200 for this index call option when the current market price is 445. So here it's 445. You exercise when the current market price is 445. I like this. I think what Brian is getting at in the answer set, we'll check just in a minute, is that index options settle in cash. So you should definitely know that index options Both the contract and the exercise, both are T+1, and the exercise in cash. So here, what says that I'm long, so what I expect the seller to do is give me the intrinsic value. So the intrinsic value of a 420 call when the index is at 445 is 25 points. So the difference between the strike price, it says, and the market value, so that's 420, 445, 25 times 100, $2,500. That sounds pretty decent, right? That's called the multiplier, by the way. 100 shares of the stock, net difference, difference, but no. I like that. I'm not, I don't know if that's the particular phraseology you'll see, but make sure you understand index options settle in cash, and the exercise and the contract are both T+1, both T+1. 39. Your customer is 42 years old and seeking income to diversify his portfolio, but is concerned about rising interest rates. As their registered rep, you mentioned that equity investments usually do well in a rising interest rate environment. I'm not so sure I believe that, but the customer is a bit uncomfortable about investing in stocks at this time. Which of the investments would be least interest rate sensitive? Least interest rate sensitive. Well, we have three things here that are going to be interest rate driven. I'm going to go with C just because of the conversion feature. I think the conversion feature may make this still be able to work even in a rising interest rate environment. This is why I don't really care for the answer set here, but given that answer set, that's the best potential answer. I would prefer that it says common stock, and to be honest with you, Dean doesn't even like common stock in rising interest rate environments. So I'm recording this as interest rates look like they're going to rise, and the stock market has not been reacting favorably to that. 40 is very testable. 40 is very testable. So you've got to be able to figure out here which one of these bonds is trading at a premium. You're going to have to do this at least, once or twice. Now, hopefully on your SIE, you remembered your teeter-totter or your seesaw. I love the teeter-totter or seesaw because it turns judgment questions into aim and shoot, point and click questions. And anytime I can do that, I'm a big fan. So what I'm looking for here is the bond that's trading at a premium. And the reason that's important is because it's very likely the customer who buys this bond, they may still want to buy it, but they may not be able to hold it to maturity. So for bonds at a discount or par, we quote yield to maturity. For bonds at a premium, we disclose yield to call, whichever is lower. Sometimes we refer to that as yield to worst. And so as I look at bond A here, bond A is a bond at a discount. And how does Dean know the bond A is at a discount? Because it has a 9% nominal yield, also known as a 9% coupon, also known as a 9% fixed or stated rate of return. And the yield to maturity, if I hold it, is a 9.5. So that means I must have paid a discount. Bond B, it has a 9% nominal yield, 9% coupon, 9% fixed or stated rate of return. The Series 7 is kind of like learning a foreign language. And they say when you dream the foreign language, that's when you know it. So I guess when you have your first Series 7 dream, you're in pretty good shape. That is a bond at a par. When the coupon and the yield to maturity are the same. Basis, by the way, is just the fancy word for yield to maturity, in case you didn't know that. So that's the fancy word for yield to maturity. Bond C, again, is a bond at a discount. And then boom, here is our bond. We have a coupon at 7.5. It only yields to us 6.5. And so we must have paid a premium. The answer is D. That is very, very much something you're going to encounter on your exam. 41. By the way, in the comment section, if I do something you like, hit the like button for sure. But also in the comment section, like on that one, what was I going to say? I was going to say something. I forgot what I was going to say in the comment section. Anyways, I would say I can explain. Oh, here's what I was going to say. Like 40, when I haven't timestamped this yet, I timestamp these. So you don't have to watch the entire practice final if you're looking for a particular thing. So, when I get done with this at some point, and the timestamps in the video description will say yield to call, timestamped. We're about 40 minutes in, and you can go right there. And I haven't decided over the last year or not when timestamping, should I like exclamation points or put TQ to mean test question with exclamation points to point out that some of these questions that I've been commenting on them are higher risk than others. In the comment section, let me know your thoughts on that. If I should distinguish within the timestamps, things that are higher risk versus lower risk or higher probability than lower probability. Appreciate your thoughts on that. Anyways, 41. Which customer would be most suited to invest $20,000 in a long-term zero coupon bond? I told you there's definitely going to be a zero coupon bond question or two. 50-year-old cardiologist making a couple $100,000. I don't think so, because remember this imputed, interest you're receiving, the accretion is taxable. So I can't imagine why I would buy a 20-year long-term zero coupon bond for a cardiologist. A 30-year-old single mom with 2 young children, maybe we buy a zero that would mature when the kids are 18 for college, perhaps. That sounds pretty reasonable so far. 25-year-old college student want to buy a house. 60-year-old, it looks like based on that, the answer is going to be B. And as we said, zero coupon bonds are very good for target date investments, people who need a set sum of money at some future date. Your customer notices the value of the underlying index of an inverse ETF has decreased in value. As the registered rep, you would inform the customer. I kind of like this one. This one's pretty clever by Brian. I kind of like this one. What he's testing is the inverse relationships, right? So if this is an inverse ETF and it's going down, that means that you would inform the customer the value of the ETF, right, would increase in value, right? Because it has that negative correlation going on. So your customer knows the value of the underlying index of an inverse ETF has decreased in value. As a registered rep, you would inform the customer, right, that it has an increase in value. Wow, kind of confusing. Kind of clever. I would just know it goes the opposite direction, so I'm not so sure I'd worry too much about how Brian has this worded. If a registered rep mother-in-law wants to purchase shares of an IPO that his firm is underwriting, he should. I think I should say a registered reps. I think there should be apostrophe. I don't think the mother-in-law is a registered rep. I think it's the registered rep has a mother-in-law who wants to purchase an IPO. And she is an immediate family member. And I'm going to tell the mother-in-law to purchase the shares and they come available in the secondary market. Yeah, there's no withholding at that point, right? Because you're not taking the shares and withholding them from one of your customers to give to your mother-in-law to ingratiate yourself. And so the answer is C. I think that one's a little more complicated than you're actually going to see on the test. On the test, what they're interested in is, I call you, I say, man, it must be so cool. You got your 7 and you get first dibs on all these great IPOs. Man, I wish I worked at a brokerage firm. You go, no, it's actually the opposite. I'm not allowed to have the IPO allocation because that's to make sure that we make a bona fide good faith distribution to people who are customers, and that applies to my immediate family members as well. So a little more straightforward than Brian's question there. 44. If a client asks you, his registered rep, to help him raise capital for a new golf course in which the investors will have ownership, by doing so, you will not be paid, but you'll be able to play the course anytime you would like for free. What Brian is getting here is at what's called selling away. When you're getting people involved in investments not sponsored by your employer, you're supposed to tell your principal and have, written notification, and they're going to either say there's an adverse interest or not. So tell your principal what you plan to do and let them know you will not be paid for it. You ought not tell them about the free golf, I think. Just let's look what our next choice is. Write a letter to your firm asking permission to take part in this with your customer. Let your principal know after you've helped with the client with this, no permission. Now, if there were compensation, B would have been correct, but since there's not going to be any compensation, it's an outside business activity. I don't like this particular question. The answer, let me just give you the actual question you're going to encounter on the exam. And the actual question you're going to encounter is, they'll say on the test, a registered rep sells an investment not sponsored by his employer without permission. This is a prohibited practice and is known as, and you have to come up with selling away. So very much a straightforward aim and shoot, point and click question on the actual exam. So B would have been a good miss, but since there's no compensation, that's why it's A instead of B. Datatech imports raw material from their Tokyo supplier with payment in yen expected in 30 days. Datatech fears the value of the dollar will decline in the near future. to hedge their purchase. You are going to get a question like this. You are going to get a question like this. And so if I'm a data tech imports and I'm afraid the dollar will go down, what I'm really saying is the yen is going up. And so I want to do something that I could profit from the yen going up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy calls on the yen and hope the money that I make on the yen calls is going to offset what I lose in the spot market, the current market, when I do the exchange. And so DataTech imports raw material from their Tokyo supplier with payment in yen, expected in 30 days. However, DataTech fears, now, Brian here is telling you that the dollar is going down. I'm not being facetious. The dollar is not a foreign currency, and foreign currencies have an inverse relationship. So, hedging is about what if you're wrong. So if I'm thinking the dollar is going up, what I'm fearful of is the yen rising. And so I always take the opposite market action for what I fear. And so up is what I fear. I fear the yen going up. So I'm going to buy calls. Now, I think Brian, knowing Brian a little bit, he's probably trying to give you kind of a trick in thing where your epic exporters buy puts and importers buy calls. Maybe you have to think this through a little bit. But Data Tech here is an importer, right? They're importing raw materials. So a lot of you have probably have this memory aid that is called EPIC. And EPIC stands for exporters buy puts and importers buy call. And this is an importer, A customer asks you to send duplicate confirms and statements to an outside investment advisor. And so what do? Note that on the account form with his name and address. Deny the request, as this would need power of attorney. You don't need power of attorney to follow a customer's instructions to send duplicate confirms. Duplicates. He's not asking you to change the address. He's just asking you to send the information to his investment advisor. Send the request for registration and the processing department for execution. Sounds pretty good. Get prior approval. No, given that answer set, the answer is C. Your customer owns a leveraged ETF whose goal is 200% of the underlying index. Both the index and the ETF are valued at 50. If the index goes up 10% the first day, so I'm just going to take 50 times 10%. So that's 55. Right, so now it's at 55. And it goes down the second day, 20%. So now it's going to go down 20%. That's 11. So it looks like if we do that math, the answer is going to be on question 47. See, the customer owns 200%. I got to double that. And so I went back, right? So 200%. So I took it up 10 and then I took it down 20 and I got to double that. And so the answer to 47 is C. Be careful on that 200%. If you miss that, you're going to come up with the wrong answer. A member firm completes an agency transaction. So what does that mean? Agency transaction means I didn't fill the order from inventory. On your behalf, I contacted some other firm and did the trade. So what best describes this transaction? It's not a markup. It's going to be a commission. It's going to be a broker transaction. It's going to be C, 2 and 3. 2 and 3. There's a great way to remember this. One great way you can remember this is with ABC. ABC, that stands for Agency Broker Commission. Agency Broker Commission. Another one you can use, I like to use this one, broker dealer. There's lots of memory aid tricks here. Brokers act as agents for commissions. Dealers act as principals for profits. So that's another way you could remember this. So, by the way, if this would say a member firm completes a dealer transaction or, a principal transaction, then the answer would have been 1 and 4. So be careful. This could be either one of those. sometimes we refer this as an order entry firm. This would be like Robinhood or E-Trade or Fidelity. They don't have inventory in securities. 49, what would the result of a shareholder's equity be? Equity if a 10% stock dividend is paid, a 10% stock dividend, there's no change. There's no effective change in proportion ownership or anything when there's a stock dividend or stock split. Just a marketing gimmick, so to speak. So no change. I wouldn't worry too much about that one, but I would certainly know that the stock dividend the shareholders are receiving is not taxable. And then what they're going to have to do is adjust their cost base. So if I had 100 shares, I now have 10%, 10 additional shares. I have 110 shares and I adjust my cost base. I think a good way to remember this, you always end up with more shares at a lower price, more shares at a lower price. There's another version of this. Brian, everybody knows this is on the test. So in a new margin account, key phraseology, man, when you're doing your exam and you see that new margin account, be looking for this trick. Oh, look, another trick. Sell short at 34. Sell short at 34. So remember, 3,400 is what I'm going to get from selling the borrowed stock. And then I'm going to have to put half with that. I'm going to have to put half with that. And so half would be 1,700. But remember, I got to come up with a minimum of 2. All right. Well, that's question 50. Let me just say hi. Whoop. That's now an hour. As I told you, these lectures, these explications are typically an hour and a half, sometimes, maybe closer to 2. And I want you to know, you can always hit the pause button, come back to it. We're on question 50. And I'll turn this thing back over because I'm trying to let you kind of know where we're at. That's in video time. So, that's not in you hitting the pause button and looking at that. So if you want to take a pause and take a break, now would be a time to do it. I am going to continue to march on. So let's see, practice final, there we go. Question 50, boom. A customer purchases a security and holds it in their account for 18 months. With no other transactions, how often would a BD send the customer statement? How often would the customer send account statements? The answer to 51 is B. That's very much a test question. And I would certainly know under what circumstances, let me a little carried away with my highlighter there. I would definitely know under what circumstances that would be monthly. And that would be monthly if there's a penny stock in the account. And I would definitely know what a penny stock is. A penny stock is a non-NASDAQ stock non-NASDAQ OTC stock under 5. Very testable. A BD completes a trade involving a book entry security. Book entry means there's no physical certificate. And treasuries are a trade book entry. Even though treasury securities are book entry, you're confused if you buy like a treasury bond or treasury. You say transfer and ship. I say there is nothing to transfer and ship. There is nothing to transfer and ship. And a lot of state GOs are also a book entry. Anyways, book entry means just that, right? We're just going to make the appropriate journal entries for the transfer of the ownership. An investment banker is underwriting a new issue with the following. Shares being held for sale by supporting banks, 100,000. The price per share to the public is going to be 10. The manager's fee is 10 cents. So as a manager, I get 10 cents on every share sold. The selling concession is 50 cents. The underwriting's allowance is 70 cents. The amount paid to the issuer is $9.20. So the difference between $9.20 and 10 is called the spread. It's called the spread. I would definitely know that. I would know that typically the smallest individual component is the manager's fee. I would definitely know that typically the largest individual component is the selling concession. How much does the underwriter pay to syndicate members for the additional risk of selling new securities? How much does the underwriter pay to syndicate members for the additional risk that they're incurring? Well, the total allowance here is 70 cents, and that includes the 50. And so that 70 cents includes the 50. And then we could figure out that if it's 80 cents and the 70 includes that, that's going to be 20 cents that the managers are making on every share sold. So that's going to be 20 cents on the number of shares we're talking about here. And so the answer is going to be B. So, that 70 cents, let me just put that there. Let me go. I'll just put this in, in real world phraseology. I'm an underwriter. I'm a member of the syndicate. I say, what can I take down shares for? And the manager says, Dean, you can take down shares for $9.30. Right? $9.30. That's the 10 cents, 9.20. And then if I sell those shares myself, I'm going to make 70 cents. But I might want to build my own bracket. And by building my own bracket means I'm going to sign up selling members like Schwab or whoever for that. So there's that 70 cents. There's not as much, economic stuff on the test as there used to be. I think they've assigned a lot of that stuff onto the SIE. What interest rates does the Federal Reserve Board use to affect monetary policy? And so remember, they directly control the discount rate. And Fed funds is what they target. So you should definitely know it's not the prime rate because that's what banks charge its best customers. I certainly like Brian's answer set here. Broker calls what banks charge as brokerage firm. That could have been a quick test question. That's what's used to finance margin accounts, debit balances, and margin accounts. The discount rate set directly by the Fed. That's what you pay to borrow money. And the Fed funds rate. I'm going to go with C here. I'm not sure I'll get that right. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get it right. When if you buy the, I'm pretty sure I'm getting it right. But if you buy the PDF and you score Dean up, if you see something, say something, give me a call, say Dean, you missed one. Question 55 is a 50-50. About half the time on debrief, somebody tells me they see this. Half the time they do not. I debate whether I should even show this to you. You're more likely to get more questions wrong than right. But here, when you buy a muni bond at a premium, and that's what we did here at 108, you don't get to decide what to do on your tax return in terms of setting that up. So the first thing I got to recognize is this is a muni bond that I bought at 108. That's 1,080 in bond speak. So I'm going to lose $80 over the remaining life. And the remaining life here, it says it matures in 20 years. And so that means, let me get on my calculator, that I'm going to lose $80 over 20 years. So what I'm going to have to decrete each year is $4. That's called, I call it decretion. People sometimes, that's a Dean thing. I just call it straight line amortization, downward decretion. I call straight line amortization upward accretion. What Dean calls things is not testable, but that's what's going on here. So I'm supposed to decrete this thing $4 a year. It said I've held it for 10 years. So if I've held this thing for 10 years, and I've been decreting $4 each year, that means I should have decreted. By the way, I'm not being facetious here. I'm terrible at arithmetic, so I'm going to get my calculator. And so I'm going to decrete $4 times 10 years. I should have decreted $40. And so my original cost base was 108. And I should have written down 40. So my adjusted cost base is 1,040. And now I sell it for 102. And if I sell it for 102, so it looks like my adjusted cost base is 104, and I sell it for 102. Looks like I got a $20 loss here. Probability 50%, you'll see that on your exam. So the first thing you have to do is recognize that that's a muni bond purchased at a premium, 108, 1,080. You have to do straight line amortization downward. I call that decretion. You don't get to decide how to set this up on your tax return. The IRS thinks you don't take your last buck and buy a muni bond. And PS, this muni bond is trading at a premium, which means it has a higher than today's tax-free return. And so the answer there is A. Don't be careful. Don't start trying to, do this to everything you bump into. This is for muni bonds purchased at a premium. Again, in the comment box, let me know, is the probability helpful? Do you think when I timestamp this, should I, put 50% probability? It's anecdotal. It's not like I know it's a 50%, but if you think I should probably, tell you whether it's low probability or high probability, like today I had a guy on social media ask me, about the difference between RVPs and DFPs. I said it's very low probability. And if you get it, I don't think you will. It's 35 days, but well. All right. So onward and upward we go. By the way, remember that's practical application. So you want to make sure you get all the recognition style questions you are entitled to, all the practical application questions, because there's no, interpretation of practical application. You either get it right or you get it wrong. You want to save your misses for judgment questions. Judgment questions are those questions where you go, oh man, I don't know. Do I put that in there? Do I take that out? A municipality wants to call in outstanding revenue bonds. It may do so under all the following circumstances, except. I think I would have done this with a process of elimination here. A municipality has reached the statutory debt limit. Well, I think the statutory debt limit is kind of an odd thing to have as an answer, because the statutory debt limit isn't typically about a revenue bond. It could be, but it's more associated with GOs than it is revenues. Provision of the sinking fund agreement calling for a partial call. That's fine. Sinking fund, some bonds have it, some bonds do not. Sinking is where we are required as an issuer to put aside a certain sum of money. So when the bonds come due, we can pay it. That's called funded debt. Unfunded debt is where there is no sinking fund. I said, well, I'll worry about it when I get there. So facility supporting has been condemned. Absolutely. Should have been struggling with C. And the number one reason to do it is D. So I think I would have got to the 50-50 here pretty quickly, A or B. Given it's A or B, I'm going to go with A. And the reason I'm going with A is because I know C and D for sure are things we do. Remember, it's the accept format. And I'm going to go with A because I think A is GOs, not revenue. So that's how Dean's coming up with that answer. The attorney, I would definitely know the attorney is called the bond counsel. So I would definitely know in question 57, the attorney is known as the bond counsel. For a new municipal bond offering, have concluded the bond has no contingencies as the authority. That's pretty cool. So I say, Dean, I don't see any problems here as an attorney. That's called my unqualified legal opinion. I would definitely know that. Qualified would mean I do see some contingencies. Sometimes my attorney says, Dean, I'm willing to litigate on your behalf to a successful conclusion. There's no doubt what the law here says. It's kind of black and white. One time my attorney said, Dean, I'll litigate until you run out of money. That's not what I want to hear. All of my debt securities trade and interest. I like that. I like this one because the opposite of and interest, and I think that's more the test issue Brian's getting at here. I would know that the opposite of trading and interest is bonds that trade flat. And trading flat means a bond that has no accrued interest, no calculation of accrued interest. And so let's see here. There we go. I have a treasury bill, and treasury bills trade flat with no calculation of accrued interest. Treasury bonds, the buyer owes the seller the accrued interest. So it's going to be the price and the interest you owe the seller, the accrued interest you owe the seller. Corporate bond, the price and the accrued interest that you owe, the and interest you owe the seller, calculated from the dated date up to, but not including the settlement date. So yeah, I kind of like this one. I think the takeaway is not so much the ones that do. Again, the question here for test purposes is this idea that does not. So I like that one. Your customer has mentioned that despite the fact their child will most likely not be going to college, they would like to invest for their child's education. As a registered rep, which would you recommend? A Coverdell, because it allows use for both primary and secondary educations. SEP IRA, that seems like a weird one. That's out. UGMA, because it allows the custodian to remove the gift. No, gifts are irrevocable. HR 10, HR 10s are KEO plans for self-employed. It's a House bill. It's called House of Representatives Bill number 10. But if you're a senator, we name it after you. And that was Senator Keogh's idea. That's called a KEO plan for self-employed. So by process of elimination, I'm going to say A. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would be prepared on the test for a question about a comparison between a Coverdell and a 529. So make sure you know the distinctions between a Coverdell and a 529. Your customer has stated they would be able to trade during the day, has stated they would like to be able to trade and purchase below the NAV. I like this. I don't like Brian's phraseology here, but ladies and gentlemen, you have got to know the differences between an open-end and closed-end fund. That's, more than one question. In my lecture on mutual funds, it's kind of like this. It's long. It's like an hour and 45 minutes, but you can hit the pause button. I highly recommend it. That is a very target rich. There's like 30 questions. My mutual fund lecture includes ETFs, ETNs, and all the various things. But anyways, the reason I was reminded of that lecture is I have one of my all-time slides in there that I love. And it's the contrasting of an open-end and closed-end fund. You can go to the timestamp, find that, and make sure at least you watch that part because it's target rich, very target rich. An investor who is fairly conservative is seeking income and doesn't think the market will rise. As a registered rep, what would you recommend? I kind of like this one. Let's be clear that, multiple option strategies, advanced option strategies are not conservative strategies, right? And buying a put is speculative. So given that answer, say covered calls. You're definitely going to get a question. Brian here has it phrased this way, but on the test, in terms of suitability, the way they'll say this on the test is a client is interested in generating additional income on a stock that they own. And then you have to come up with a covered call. So covered calls are definitely there. You definitely need to be able to do covered calls. I'm just here we're at question 60, and I don't see that Brian's given us too many option questions. Maybe they're coming, but you're going to get 20 plus option questions. So here's our first. Let's see if Brian steps it up in terms of how many option performance opportunities it gives us. Yeah, an investor is long. Here we go. So an investor is long 100 shares of XYZ April 40 call and short 1 July 40 call. So what best describes this position? Pretty tricky. It's not a, let's see, long, an 840 call and July 40 call. So this is a spread. A spread is when we're long and short the same type of option. And here we are long the Aprils and we're short the Julys. And the longer term option is going to have a greater premium. And so this is going to be a calendar spread because what's different is the months. And so we need 3. 3 is certainly a part of our answer set. And it looks like we are, the dominant premium dominates the position, the larger premium. And longer term options have a greater premium. And so that short July call is going to have a greater premium. That's what dominates. And so this is going to be a bearish calendar spread. That's a pretty tough one. So boy, Brian's stepping up on that one. I'm going to say that answer is C, 2 and 3. Now, just so you know how I did that, right? I just took the July 40 call and the April 40 call, and I'm trying to figure out which one of those are called legs, not testable, but what dominates. And it's the one with the greater premium. And longer term option contracts always have greater premiums. So the longer term option contract is the July 40 call and we're short. And so that's bearish. By the way, I'm protected until the April call expires and then I've got a naked call in my hands. But, I'm protected by the April call there. 63, your customer invested in oil and gas direct participation program. He's informed you that was informed the partnership is going to be dissolved. Partnerships have a finite life. He's concerned about his liability for the outstanding debts. Upon liquidation of the D, looks like there's a typo there. I'll get with Brian on his exam. I guess he doesn't realize part of the collaborations. I get to proofread some of his practice. I'm guilty too. Remember, if you go to my timestamp, a lot of time, I can't tell you how many people will send me something. Before you send me something about a typo or something you disagree with me about, please check the timestamps because, usually I address it in there and say, hey, if you don't say anything, though, nobody does. Not a big deal. The other thing I probably say is, gee, don't you have better things to be doing than correcting the grammar or the structure? Anyways, upon liquidation of the direct participation program, there's $2 million in assets and an outstanding $5 million non-recourse. Now, non-recourse means they can't come back at the partners for that $5 million. That's what non-recourse. Recourse means the partners are liable for that. And they might hear from a bank saying, listen, the partnership didn't pay off the debt, and now you have to. Non-recourse means that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. The registered rep would inform the customer, that you can only lose your original investment here, which is in this case, what is the original investment? Well, it doesn't tell us, but right? That's what you can lose as your original investment. So the answer there is D. More of a practice question if you're using, I hope you're not using past perfect, because they get so in the weeds. I'm a contracted, Kaplan contracts with me to teach some of their class, but even Kaplan has questions like this where they make a distinction between a recourse note and the mortgage, and you're only going to get 2 or 3 partnership questions. So please don't overdose on margin. Don't overdose on partnerships. Partnerships you definitely need to know aren't liquid. I know you're tired of me telling you. I have a lecture on that. It's totally adequate to everything you need to know. So there's certain lectures, if you're using the channel, by the way, it's not a substitute for your paid study materials, but my margin lecture is good to go. I would do anything beyond margin in terms of passing the test. I know your employer might want you have to do chapter checks and progress through Kaplan or Past Perfect or STC or Knopman or Solomon. I'm talking about the actual test. Brian and I both, simpatico. There's things we disagree about, but Brian and I both are extremely focused on the test, not anything other than passing the test. So, and most of the providers really go overkill on partnerships and margin. Anyways, a municipality's legal opinion, remember that the bond counsel covers which of the following? No, this is an attorney. An attorney doesn't do feasibility studies. Attorney doesn't do the creditworthiness. They certainly, if you're going to buy one of these things, you definitely want to know whether the bonds are tax exempt or not. And the reason bonds are tax exempt is because of Supreme Court constitutional decisions. Very early in American history, there was a Bank of the United States of America duly authorized by Congress, and the state of Maryland hated it. And the state of Maryland went to McCullough, the bank branch manager, and said, you owe $10 million in state income tax. And McCullough said, I think it's debatable whether you can tax the federal government in the conduct of its business. They sent the National Guard into the vault. They yanked $10 million. They said, sue us. In a very famous Supreme Court case, McCullough versus Maryland, Chief Justice John Marshall said the ability to tax is the ability to destroy. And we can't have you, states, interfering with us in the conduct of our business, the federal government. But if you don't bother us, we won't bother you. You leave us alone and we'll leave you alone. The reason that muni bonds are tax-free is because of what we call reciprocity or reciprocal immunity. And again, that comes from constitutional law. There's nothing bigger than Supreme Court decisions, right? So 3 and 4. A customer has indicated to the registered rep that she doesn't believe the market will move much more in the near term. The most appropriate strategy would be, I think I might go with process of elimination. On a big picture level, you're either buying, and when it comes to options, you're either buying volatility or you're selling volatility. You're either buying volatility or you're selling volatility. So a customer has indicated she doesn't believe the market will move. So what I might have done here is process of elimination. I'd say, well, when you buy option positions, volatility is your friend and you need it. I mean, you need the stock to move because you got to cover your out-of-pocket cost. If I really wanted to teach you options, I'd make you buy one. And once you were out of pocket, you'd figure out pretty quickly, how this game works. So we're going to be selling the volatility. So now I got to decide, am I going to sell a spread or am I going to sell a combination? Well, if I sell a spread, I'm selling directional volatility. So for example, if I sell a credit call spread, I'm selling upward volatility. I don't think the stock is going to go up. If I'm selling a put spread, I'm selling downward volatility. I don't think the stock is going to go down. There's nothing here about direction. It just says she thinks it's going to stay where it's at within a trading range. So I think what she should do is sell a straddle with different strike prices. Sell a straddle with a different strike price. Straddles with different strike prices are called combinations. And so what I think she should do is a combination. 66, a new customer wants to open a cash account under his company's name as the registered rep. What paperwork would you need to do this? Well, you're going to need a new account form. That's not challenging. You need a new account form for everything. And then we need a corporate resolution saying which corporate officer can churn, I'm sorry, trade the account. And so we definitely need one. We definitely need a corporate resolution saying which corporate officer can trade the account. Corporate bylaws, well, we don't need that unless they're going to do margin, because it's nothing here. It says cash account. In a margin account, we would need that because we need to know that margin is specifically permitted. But it's just a cash account, so we're not going to need that. And there's no margin. It says margin agreement with your margin account. So given that answer set, it looks like our best answer here. Whoop. Try it again. 1 and 2. A RR is discussing a possible investment in several growth funds from several different investment companies in order for the customer to be better diversified. The strategy could possibly lead to, at some point, a growth fund is a growth fund is a growth fund. So, I mean, how many growth funds do you need? A better overall trade? I don't know. I think you're probably guaranteeing mediocrity. Reduce risk for diversification. No, risk prevails despite diversification when you're in a mutual fund. Greater exposure to market risk. Yeah, I think I'd be on the lookout for too long to be wrong. No, I'm joking. It looks like this is a possible breakpoint sale. You're definitely going to get tested on a breakpoint sale. Be careful what you're being asked. Read carefully. Breakpoints are good. That's a quantity discount. Breakpoint sales are bad. That's why I try and maximize my commission by avoiding the breakpoint. So big no-no. An institutional customer is considering investing in a collateralized mortgage obligation. Your company sponsors, as indicated, they're most concerned with repayment risk. Which of the following would be most appropriate? I would know the difference between a plan amortization class and a targeted amortization classes. I'm oversimplifying, but that's my job. The plan amortization classes represents the early cash flows. So when we carve up this mortgage pool again, I have a lecture on this, but it's very unlikely people are going to refinance right away. And the target amortization classes are the later cash flows. So I would definitely know PACs versus tax. PACs have less risk. Tax have more risk. So if this said, the most risk, it would be the tax. They need to sign a suitability statement. So the answer there is A. This is very much, when we now have with this practice exam number 4, TestGeek practice, we have 4. And one thing you want to do as a test taker in your study materials, let's throw that in the mix, is look for confirmation. So, when Dean has an answer set and Brian has the same answer set, Brian and I had dinner the other night, we're not comparing our answer sets. Where we're saying is we think you should be prepared for this question. As the market comes down, the sell stop's very testable or placed below the market. As the market breaks through the support level, for that stock, the market price, these orders get triggered, accelerating the bearish trend. So the answer to this one is C, and then the other version of this would be a bull market, and that would be B. So make sure you're prepared for either version of this question. This question, the answer is D, right? So, and then you better know where the orders are placed in relationship. Your customer informs you that news is expected on data tech. She believes will have a big impact on the stock. Unfortunately, she's not sure if the news is going to be good or bad. So, maybe it's a court case or something. So if she thought it was going to be good news, she would, If she thought it was going to be good news, she would buy a call. If she thought it was going to be bad news, she would buy a put. And so I think what she needs to do is a straddle, right? A straddle. Yeah, I did a straddle. I was uncertain whether the new CEO was going to fix their problems or not. And I said, well, if he fixes the problems, the stock is going up. And if he doesn't fix the problems, the stock is going to tank. That's Dean's thesis. I could be wrong, but that's my thesis. And I said, well, I don't care what happens as long as something happens. He fixed the problems. My put expired, but my call came through. So the answer is D. D. Your customer has a stock position with a substantial gain, is concerned with the market may reverse itself in the near future. He would, if he would lose his large gain. he would be prepared to sell the stock and receive a certain price. So if you're going to sell the stock and receive a certain price, that means the strike price. As a registered rep, if we want to protect a stock position, we should buy a put. We should buy a put on the stock. Long the stock and buying a put. Now, I think Brian is being a little harder than the actual exam because he doesn't say protection here. But for protection, you're going to buy an option contract, and for income, you're going to sell. And so here we're going to buy a put. Please note, this might interrupt your holding period. So because you have to be at risk for more than 12 months. So if we buy the put, and after we bought the stock, right? We bought the stock and now we're buying this put, we're going to interrupt the holding period. It's, more of an esoteric thing at a low probability. But definitely you should know that we should do that. I have a couple of lectures on this. I have a little short version of this. And so, if you need some review, go ahead and do that. We have over on the channel, I don't know, somebody can tell me there's probably 18 hours of option lectures there. So all the following securities are backed by the full faith and care of the United States government, except I like this one. T-bills, yep. T-notes, T-bonds, yeah. I like that one. I like the answer set. P.S. I would also know, not this question, but treasury stock pays no dividends and has no voting rights. I would definitely know that as well. 73, a customer purchased a new issue municipal bond at a discount several years ago and would like to sell the bond in the secondary market. To determine the cost base, they would be required to use which method? I kind of like this. This is very similar like the test. We don't ask you to do it. We're just saying if we did ask you to do it, what would you do? And what you would do here is accretion to figure out what your cost base is. The Investment Company Act 1940 requires the board of directors to contain at least 30% of non-interested board members. This is somebody who represents the public. We're hoping that if we go to rip off the public, at least some people would say, I don't think that's a good idea. Non-interest in one that it would be prohibited from investing in the fund. Nope. Is not otherwise employed by the investment company. Sounds pretty good. Not permitted to attend board meetings. No. May not vote. No. So given that answer set, the answer is going to be B. A customer is currently invested in a direct participation program that provides her with significant passive income. She would like to find an additional direct participation offset. So she's looking for something that might have some passive activity losses. So I say, listen, you've got that passive income. Why don't we get aggressive? And if we don't find oil and gas, at least we can write that off. We can use our passive activity losses against our passive income. So we're looking for something, we're looking to be aggressive here. And because we can be aggressive, because if we are wrong, at least we can use those losses. Be careful about how you present this, but this is spot on. Brian's got this spot on in terms of what you're going to be asked on the test. And so here, 75, we're either going to look for an oil and gas exploratory program. I don't see that. Low-income housing looks pretty good. Low-income housing, we get tax credits for it. Tax credits are a dollar for dollar whack out of your tax bill. A dollar for dollar whack out of your tax bill. I would know you get tax credits for low-income housing, and you also get tax credits for historic real estate. All right, well, that was my beeper again. We're now at 90 minutes into this thing. So if you want to take another break, please do so. I'm trying to shorten up. We have a lot of short lectures. We've got longer lectures. These explications, as I told you, take a little longer. So we're talking about video time, Dean time, not your time in terms of hitting the record button or watching and stopping and pausing. But that's where we're at right now. So we want to take another break. Now would be the time to do so. By the way, you should chunk your study times into the same blocks, like 30-minute blocks or 45-minute blocks or hour blocks. The idea you think you're going to study for 8 hours straight is ridiculous. Not going to happen. Okay, so you can take your break, but I'm going to continue on. Let me reset for, let's bring this in. Let's bring this in the next 30 minutes, let's hope. A customer noticed that the beta on a particular stock is 1. And 1 means if the market goes up 10%, this should go up 10%. So the performance is more volatile. No, if it was more volatile, it would have a beta more than 1. The performance is equal to the underlying market. That looks pretty good. The other way they ask this sometimes on the test, the other way it looks like, I don't know why I can't get the highlighter correct. The other way they like to ask us on the test is an index fund. Like they'll say, what would be the index fund's performance if the index went up 10 and it has you would say the index fund has a beta 1, so it would do the same thing. An investor age 53 would like to maximize income with moderate risk. He makes $75,000 a year. He's invested for the past 15 years. Which invested would be most appropriate? I like Brian's exam. He has a lot of suitability questions, and you could expect a lot of suitability questions. It says moderate risk, so we're going to get rid of the government securities. A stock that has the potential to grow over time. That doesn't sound pretty smart because you'd have selection risk, right? Moderate, that would be not moderate risk. A money market fund ain't going to get them anywhere. So given that, I'm going to go for a REIT. Make sure you know that REITs and mutual funds don't pass through losses. They just pass through income. And make sure you know that the minimum they must distribute is 90% of their net investment income. You have learned that your customer is subject to the IRS alternative minimum tax. Which investment would be least appropriate? So some bonds are taxable to those subject to the AMT. If you're subject to the alternative minimum tax, I should not recommend an industrial development revenue bond because that's actually might be taxable to you. State of New York GO looks fine. U.S. Treasury. None of those are, the other three are not what we call preference items. So what they're getting at, what Brian's getting at in this question, what is a preference item? Preference meaning, we're going to make you do an alternative calculation and toss out certain things that you're not going to be able to use, like home office or, accelerated depreciation. Or the most likely ones you get on the test are this thing, a private activity bond or a public purpose non-essential bond. In a discussion with your customer, he tells you he wants to buy 1,000 shares of an interrelated stock. As he register up for the account, well, again, we're testing you on, do you understand what constitutes taking discretion? And if we're going to make a decision about action, asset, here we're making a decision about asset, we need to have discretionary authority. Without discretionary authority, we can't do that. Which of the following is required to sign the new account form? Which of the following is required to sign the new account form? It's going to be a principal of the firm. Aim and shoot, point and click. So, make sure, again, that would be a good poor man's flashcard, by the way. I mentioned again, if you're going to spend the $16 to buy this thing from Brian, I would print the PDF. You can print it more than once. I think that would be the case. I mean, because I think it's downloadable. And as I mentioned, what I might want to do is the night before or morning of, or both, just go through my poor man's flashcards, particularly these questions where Brian has it pretty spot on, and read the question and the right answer before you test. All righty. So 81, which of the following best describes 144A? 144A is about QIBs, qualified institutional buyers of securities. And those are investors that have assets under management of 100 million or more. And what QIBs are allowed to do under 144A is buy unregistered foreign and domestic securities. All right, so which of the following best describes? Sell as a restricted stock by institutions. Sell a restricted stock by accredited investors. Sale of stock by all investors. So 144A is going to be unregistered. Restricted, by the way, is the same thing as unregistered. So this is going to be sale of restricted stock. Well, let me get rid of that. By institutions. Now, if it just said 144, then it would be, a sale of stock by insiders. Economic theory that believes taxes there's a couple here that I just want to make sure we're Yeah. It looks like that last question looks so much like a 65, 66 question. It kind of scared me. I thought, oh my God, have I been executing the wrong exam? I'm like, oh my God, no, hope not. The reason I thought is economic theory plays out mainly on the SIE and the 65. So the economic theory that believes decreases in taxes increases government money. That is kind of the opposite of our friend John Maynard Keynes, because he's the founder of what says demand side. So the answer is C. I think it's very low probability on the 7. Maybe Brian's got some debrief that somebody saw that. That's usually SIE and 65. If you're in the middle course of your testing journey, so let people know that are on the SIE, that's their first leg, that the channel exists and there's lots of stuff for them. And my economics lecture is spot on for the SIE, not for preparing people to do practice questions, but the exam itself. It's spot on for both SIE candidates and 65 candidates. An investor owns a 6% convertible bond currently trading at 90. It's convertible into the common stock at 50. So this is really important. When given the conversion price, the first thing we got to do is establish the conversion ratio. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take the $1,000 and we're going to divide it by the conversion price to establish the conversion ratio. Now, I'm not being facetious. I'm going to use my calculator because I'm terrible at arithmetic. So I get a conversion ratio of 20 shares. So now I'm back in business. It says the common stock is currently trading 2 points below parity. So the next thing I'm going to have to do is figure out what is parity. So investor owns a 6% convertible bond trading at 90. So that's going to be 900. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take the current market price of the convertible, 900. I'm going to divide by the conversion ratio, 20 shares. And when I do that, what Dean is going to get is called parity of the common. And that means it's equivalent. I mean, if I buy this bond for 900, I turn it into the common stock, what would I be paying for the common stock? And so again, let me get out my calculator. And I'm going to take 900 divide by 20, and I get the parity is $45 a share. And so then it says it's trading 2 points below that. A point in a stock is a point, is $1. So it looks like it's going to be $43. I can't stress to you enough. I cannot stress to you enough that, boy, you got to discipline yourself. This is detestable to have to do this at least once. You can't be fumbling around with this math. You start in math, you can't be fumbling around. So the minute you get a convertible question, you get the convertible price, you got to establish the conversion ratio. An officer of XYZ currently owns common stock in her company that was purchased in a private placement. So that means she bought unregistered securities. In order for her to sell her securities, she would be required to do all the following except, you got to be careful on this. She's subject to a 6-month holding period. That is indeed true. She has to file the form. That's true. Sell only issuers? No. Subject to volume limitations? Yeah. Again, this is a very good opportunity for a poor man's flashcard. Remember, it said except. But if I was going to turn this into a poor man's flashcard, I think what I would do here, let me get out my, I'd get rid of the except. I'd get rid of A, or excuse me, I'd get rid of C. And now I have the truthful things. And that's what you want to be studying, those truthful things. So if you want to turn that into a poor man's flashcard, that would be the way to proceed. RR is analyzing the trading history of ABC when she notices a classic head and shoulders bottom formation appearing on the graph. You do get tested on head and shoulders patterns, and a head and shoulders pattern is a signal of a reversal. A head and shoulders pattern, this again is a very good poor man's flashcard. Aim and shoot, point and click. A head and shoulders pattern is a signal of a reversal. Whoop. That'd be another one, very good one to just kind of read the question, the right answer. The Fed's most common tool is open market operations. Again, I think that's more likely you're going to see that on your SIE or 65 than you're actually going to see this on a Series 7. But again, Brian has his reasons for putting questions into his exam. So the answer is C. Investors considering purchasing high yield bonds, they would be most concerned with, well, you probably should diversify yourself because you're going to have more credit risk. You're going to get a high return. Maybe you should do that in the context of a mutual fund. And investors consider diversifying their portfolio by including international stocks. You recommend they consider American depository receipts as an efficient way to invest internationally. That's very much a test question. Which of the following are considering ADRs are true? Which of the following are true? Oh, except, boy, be careful on these excepts, man. Dean was fumbling around there. They facilitate domestic trading, yep. Besides market, yep. Again, I think this would be good fodder for a poor man's flashcard. If you're going to do poor man's flashcards, remember, you don't want to be studying untruthful information. So what's testable is the A, B, and C. So I get rid of that. Now I got the 3 things I'm supposed to know about ADRs from my test. So you're going to take me up on that. You know, my content, my explications, all of it's a buffet. You like something, put it on your tray. If you don't like something, don't put it on your tray. An investor purchases stock regular way. It doesn't matter if it's a cash account or margin account. Regular way settlement for corporates and municipal securities is T plus 2. T plus 2. Second business day. I've been, they've really lightened up lately on the tests on Uniform Practice Code. On debrief, a lot of people are telling me they don't see what used to be pretty standard fodder about calculating accrued interest and settlement and all that stuff. So, for what it's worth. A new customer is concerned with it being anonymous and requests an account number, a numbered account. This used to show up pretty regularly, and then it went away. And I was doing this is like the night before they're going to test, or a couple nights before, and it's their last opportunity for a coaching call. We talk about whatever they want to talk about. And I had told the young lady that I don't think she was going to see it. But then, and I told her the answer, but then she said, call me and said she did see it. And there's 3 things about numbered accounts. We have to have a letter on file attesting to ownership. The only person who needs to know who the account belongs to is the registered rep and the branch manager. And operationally, it works just like any other account. An investor has opened a new option account. That's very testable. So, you need to know this in the chronological sequence. A good mnemonic for this, is date 15. The D is I give you the disclosure document, the characteristics and risks of options. Then I get your account approved. And then I can do the first trade. And then I have to have that option agreement back within 15 days. Now, if you don't get it back to me within 15 days, all you can do is offsetting transactions. You can get rid of the stuff you got. I got a fly or a bug here that's at my light. So that's me trying to kill him when I'm clapping. Customer wishes to invest in oil and gas, the direct participation program, but is averse to risk. The registered rep would be least suitable. Now, I don't think you're going to get this phraseology, but I like what Brian is getting at, which is very testable, is to know that an oil and gas exploratory program, a wildcat goes places other cats don't go. That's exploratory. Is definitely the most risky kind of a partnership we have available to a customer. So, I don't know about his phraseology here, but the takeaway is certainly testable. That's the most risky partnership we have, right? We boldly go where no one's gone before. We drill a hole. We win big or we lose big. Your customer is long one XYZ November 30 call when she learns that they've announced a 3-for-2 split. She wants to know how this will affect her option. And so what she's going to have is, again, a contract now that's going to be for 150 shares. What doesn't change is the aggregate exercise price. The aggregate exercise price is going to stay the same. So, low probability you're going to see something like that. Your customer has just purchased common stock of Hop to the Moon Brewery in a 147 offering. That's an intrastate offering of securities. It's exempt from 33. She's mentioned a friend that would also like to purchase the stock. As the RR, you would inform them. And so what Brian's getting at here are what are the requirements of a 147? It can only be sold to residents of the state. And then that resident can sell it to non-residents after 6 months. I think, again, that's a good poor man's flashcard. Yeah, by the way, you still have to register with the state administrator. You don't have to register with the SEC. You're going to get a couple questions on 147, Reg D. Reg A, I don't think you'll see because it just recently has been revised, and what they do is remove it and then reintroduce it. I definitely need to know that corporate immunities trade in 8s, and treasuries trade in 30 seconds. They're goofy. Treasuries are goofy in that they trade in 30 seconds. And they also are goofy in that they settle trade T+1. Now, there's a lot of ways to go about this, But what I like to do, let me just get my video going up. I told you I am terrible at arithmetic. So I'm going to get my calculator, and I'm going to take 8, divide by 32. And then I'm going to times that by a bond point, which is $10. And I get that that's $250. Right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 16 30 seconds. I'm going to take 16, divide by 32, and I'm going to times that by 10, the bond point, and I get $5. And so the difference between those two is B, $2.50. So that's just one way to do it. There's a lot of ways to do it. But by the way, I don't know if you'll have to actually do the practical application of that, but you need to definitely know that they trade in 30 seconds. Customers in a 34% tax bracket. They own a state of Alabama 5% bonds concerned after tax. What is the equivalent? So getting in your bracket 5% and not paying taxes. This is very testable. So we're always going to give you the tax bracket. And you're always going to have to deal with either 1 or 100% minus that tax bracket, which in this case is 34%. That's a 1 minus 34.34, however you want to do that. And that's going to be 66%. You're always going to have to deal with that. Okay, so now they're either going to give you the tax-free return or the tax return. Here we're getting tax-free, so we're going to divide. I have another little lecture where I do this. It's very testable. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take the 5% that we're receiving tax-free, and we're going to divide it by 5, divide by 64.64. And we get what we're going to do now is just shop the answer set here and look for what gives us the closest one to that. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to take 100 minus the tax bracket, which is 66. And then we're going to come up with the answer here, which in this case, when we do that math, 5 divided by 66%, or 0.66, however you want to go about it. As I said, with math, there's lots of different ways to do things. And it looks like we get 7.5. Definitely, that's again like parity. That's math you cannot be fumbling around with. So you can't be fumbling around with that math. The VIX, a lot of people see a VIX question. VIX is volatility. It's known as the fear index. And again, this is name and shoot. I would expect you to see the VIX, and you would use the VIX perhaps to hedge, So, if you're afraid the market's, called the fear gauge, you think the market's going down, you could buy calls or puts on the VIX. The city of Portsmouth, Virginia, is considering building a new bridge, wants to issue a new bond to pay for its construction. Looks like a revenue bond to me. Principal and interest will be paid by tolls. Yep. However, the tolls are insufficient. The city will back the bond. That's a double barrel bond. Ooh, I like that one. That requires voter approval, right? The first double barrel. You break into my home and I tell you I have a double barrel shotgun. What I'm telling you is I promise if I miss you with the first shot, I'm going to get you with the second shot. So the first pledge is the user fees and the second pledge is the full faith and credit. Your institutional client would like to sell their stock they purchased in a private placement 1 year ago. As their RR, you would inform them of they must file 144. Oh, institutional. Oh boy, Brian nearly got me. So remember, this is the Quib version of this. So the Quib version, they might they're going to have to file the 144A because remember they bought unregistered securities. I like that one. I almost didn't catch the institution there. I'm going to ask Brian, what is data tech? I guess that's just the firm he uses for everything. A registered rep in analyzing common stock of data tech. Notice the alpha has changed. The most likely case. So alpha is the excess return over beta. Alpha is the excess return over beta. The overall market has gone up significantly. Interest rates have risen. Inflation rate has dropped. The CEO has resigned. So it's the return that's not tied to the market as a whole. I'm not quite sure, but I would go with D here because the overall market would be the beta. Alpha is the risk associated with not the market, is the way I would say that. So I'm going to say D on that one. You have noticed that Data Tech has announced an increase in their quarterly dividend. The board of directors would return all the following. It's very testable. The X date is a function of the Uniform Practice Code. It's 1 business day prior to record. And the stock is going to go down by the amount of the dividend, and you should not sell dividends. Your customer is into opening a margin account, and the interest charge, you would direct them to the credit agreement. It tells them about broker call. I would definitely know that the loan consent form is optional. And the hypothecation agreement is where we pledge the securities as collateral for the loan, and that means the securities are going to be in street name. The mortgage bond is the senior. That's very testable to be able to rate the securities from senior to junior or junior to senior. In RR, a registered rep holds a seminar with 100 attendees. Wow. Hands out a flyer to all the attendees. This would be considered sales literature. And remember, that means it needs to be approved pre-distribution by your principal. A married couple in their early 30s has $50,000 to invest for a down payment. They currently have $100,000 domestic stocks and bonds. They understand the fundamentals of investing. The most suitable recommendation. They love this question about a house. And Cash Reserve Fund is a money market fund. So that shows up in a lot of exams, this idea about parking some money until you can find the house you want and make a down payment. I don't know why, it's this there. 106, analyzing a new school bond. That's a GO bond. The registered rep would be concerned about, well, the flow of funds is a revenue bond. And so flow of funds, we can eliminate 2 because flow of funds is found in the trust indenture, and that is for a revenue bond. It would either be gross revenue or net revenue pledge. So we can eliminate 2. Additional taxes, definitely shouldn't be struggling with that. So 1 without 2. Legal limits, is there statutory limits on the borrowing the money? Is there any legal limits? Yeah. Well, the voter's attitude has already been done with the voter approval. So that was done before we even issued the bond by taking a vote. And so in 106, I'm going to go for B. Right. So at 106, the B, we're going to be interested in the additional taxes and the voter's attitude because they did voter approval to get that. Legal limits would be, something we do after the fact. Which of the bonds is most likely to be called? Here we go again. The bond most likely to be called is the bond trading at a premium. Yeah, so the one most likely to be called is the one that the issuer is paying the highest interest on. So either 9%. And then I say, okay, well, I'm going to call the 9%, but one of them, I have to pay 101.5, 1,015. There's a prepayment penalty. And the A bonds, I can call at par. So it looks like what I'm going to call here is the bonds that have no call protection in terms of price, right? It's just like your personal situation. If I asked you, what debt are you paying off the soonest? You're going to say the debt I'm paying the highest interest on. And then once you get to the highest interest on it, you're going to say the one that doesn't have a prepayment penalty. 108. A customer purchases one XYZ April 50 call at 3 when the stock is trading at 46. The stock reaches 60. She exercises the option to purchase the shares. For the most part, cost base follows break even. So I paid 3. I exercised. My break even is 53. My cost base in the stock is 53, and there's 100 shares. So $5,300. So for the most part, when you hear cost base, you do break even. I would say 8 out of 10 times you're going to get the right answer. While at a restaurant in RR, over here is XYZ with more bad earnings. When she arrives at the office, she should contact the trading desk immediately. No. Yeah, you're in possession of material, non-public information. So you should have been able to toss out A and B and actually D right away. So by process of elimination, you should have got the C on that one. A married couple just recently retired, has a pension they receive from their respective employers that will enable them to pay all of their bills and have a little left over for emergencies. They have an additional $100,000 they would like to invest for traveling and their hobbies. They're not adverse to some risk, but consider themselves to be moderate risk takers. Which of the following would be most suitable? I like Brian's exam. He does have some of these really good suitability questions. So I think what I'm going to do is, let me get out my annotation tool. And one way you can proceed on this is by process of elimination. I think I'm going to get rid of D because that seems like that would be inappropriate. Recently, a pension, able to pay all their bills, a little left over, so I'm going to get rid of that. Opportunity fund overseas seems kind of risky. I think I'm going to go with the equity income fund where we have some income and hopefully we can get some good total return as well. An investor is long a 40 call at 6 for 600 and short a 50 call at 200. So we're going to net the two premiums. And so we got 600 out, we got 200 in. So this is a $400 debit spread. And a debit spread, Mountain Dew, DEW, debit exercise widen. Debit exercise widen. I would refer to you, I have 2 or 3 lectures on multiple option strategies. So I would refer to that to you, but it looks like we're going to want to do DEW 1 and 3. Looks like our answer here. By the way, the break even would be a number between 40 and 50. And the gain and loss is going to add up to the difference in the strikes, which is 10. All the action takes place between the strike prices. So the break even is 44. The max loss is 400. The max gain is 600. Again, put in the comment box. When I come to questions like that, I'm trying not to make this too long of an exam explication. But if you'd like, let me know in the comment box if you want me to actually take those questions and timestamp them and actually do the rest of the stuff that you would be required to do, which is, there's 8 things you got to be able to do in a spread. I have a lecture called Don't Hate the 8, and it's about the 8 questions you're required to do on spreads on the test. Custodial count 112. The answer to 112 is D. Brian's kind of trying to trick you. You might have to pay a gift tax. That's a different question. That's not what the question's about. You can give them as much as you want. Jim, a customer joint account with his wife, calls a liquidated stock in the account and requests the proceeds in his wife's individual account, also located. He states she will need the proceeds to pay for health insurance. And, this is kind of a trick. They have questions where, it sounds like your intent is good, but you're violating the rule. We can't do that because, that he may say that's what's going on, but who knows what's really going on. I like that question because Brian's making there was a situation I could do it. It sounds like that's it. No, we always cut checks to the title of the account. If it's going to be doing that, we need authorization from both parties of the account to take it from the joint account and put it in a personal account. Oh, there's my timer again. So it looks like we're 2 hours. I apologize. I got another one of these. It's like an hour and 45 minutes, but let me know if you think this is too long and not worthwhile. Put in the comment box and we'll stop explicating practice exams. They've been pretty popular. The most popular thing on the channel is a Practice exam 2, God knows why 2, but not 1, but it has 18,000 views and lots of positive comments. People found it helpful. So, it takes a while to explicate these. I've seen other channels where they do like a group explication, and people ask questions as they go, and they get through 12 questions at the same time it takes us to do the whole thing. So I still think this is the format. I've been thinking about, should I, invite you to do this live with me as a group? And based on what a mess that has looked like on other channels, I've decided that this is a better way to proceed. Anyways, a registered rep receives notice from a customer's son. The father has passed away. The son informs the RR he has power of attorney. I like this question. Very testable. Powers of attorneys cease upon the customer's death. So let's see. Notice the customer's son that his father's passed. The son informs the RR that he has power of attorney over his father's account. The son requests that all assets and account be liquidated. The RR would be required to do all. Boy, you got to be real careful on these questions. The except. Now, in the real test, that's going to be in all caps. And what Brian's getting at here, which is very testable, is powers of attorney cease upon the customer's death. This is a very good poor man's flashcard again. And what I might do in this question is I might get rid of the except. And I'm not sure I'm going to do that, because you should definitely know powers of attorney cease at death. So that's testable. You want to put that back in there. But boy, that's what you need to do. Cancel the open orders, freeze the account, wait documents. So very testable. All the following would be eligible to receive a breakpoint, except stupid, but testable. I thought Brian was going to ask us about an investment club. He didn't ask us about an investment club here. The letter of intent is only good for 13 months. And I would definitely know investment clubs do not get breakpoints. A customer is 40, currently has a 401k, wants to invest additional assets. The additional investment would only be used for emergencies. He does not want to be required to take a distribution. And you should definitely know that Roths have no required minimum distributions. A new customer age 50 would like to open an account. All the following deposits may indicate money laundering, except most of the money laundering questions show up on the SIE and the 24 in NASA. But again, be careful. This is an except question. So all of them may accept a traveler's check, a personal check. These other are what we call red flags. Red flags. Bearer securities is a red flag. Why are you using money orders? Red flag. Traveler's checks. 118. A customer owns a 6% bond on a JJ basis, January and July. The customer believes the interest rates will rise in the near term, places an order to sell his bond on April 15th. He asks whether he'll receive any accrued interest. You inform the customer all the following except. Boy, be careful on the excepts. It's not, remember, actual day basis. Remember, it's going to be a 30-day month, a 30-day month, and a 360-day year. Again, I haven't had anybody in a long time tell me they get tormented like they once did on accrued interest. So I haven't anybody tell me they've seen that in a while. An investor wants to invest internationally to hedge the U.S. economy. He would like relatively good quality, but is adverse to currency risk. I kind of like that way Brian's getting at this, right? So he's adverse. Which of the following would you not recommend? So key point, euro dollar. So in both A and D, you're lending dollars, you're getting back dollars, so you don't have any currency risk. Domestic, no currency risk. So I'm not sure that phraseology in that particular question, but I like it. I like what he's getting at. I think the most testable thing is to know that a euro dollar bond, it's, typically a European issuer, but it's denominated in dollars. Hence, no currency risk. If it was a euro bond, missing word dollar, you would have currency risk. A high net worth, a high tax bracket, owns a Puerto Rico 3%. She's concerned the interest is taxable. You should tell her this is very testable. Territories of the United States government are exempt at every level, right? The U.S. government could tax you, but chooses not to give you an incentive to invest in a territory like Puerto Rico. The states would like to, but can't because of reciprocity. An investor writes a call in July, but it expires in January of next year. When is it taxed? It's taxed when the option expires. So that's when you close out the position is when the tax consequences are realized. Which of the following would be least suitable investment for seeking conservative, least suitable for seeking conservative monthly income? Yeah. Yeah, this one looks like, leveraged bond X. Absolutely not. I would have got this right with the Sesame Street trick. One of these things is not like the other. Which bond would be subject to the AMT? I told you it's going to be these private activity bonds. Again, that's a very good poor man's flashcard. I think we did one similar here again. Let's try it again. So, if you didn't want to do it, I did it twice last time, but this time what I can probably do, let me see if this will work. Again, I'm going to take my calculator. And so there's my calculator. And the difference between that looks like 4/32. So I'm going to take 4, I'm going to divide by 32, and then I'm going to times it by a bond point, and I get $1.25. So that's how Dean would proceed in that particular question. 125, woohoo! Our last one. You definitely need to know the difference between cost base and a gift, where the recipient assumes the donor's cost base, and when somebody dies, where there's a step up in the cost base. So here the person has died, and so that's called a step up. That's very testable, and I would definitely be able to distinguish between that and something else, where the gift versus the death. So when you're reading the question, did somebody die or did somebody gift the security? Okay, well, I hope you found that helpful. I know it's we're going on our second hour here, but I want to show you, let's see if I can do this quickly. If I can do this quickly, I will do so. And then we will call it a day. Come on, Dean. I was just going to show you briefly what this little Brian's little study guide looks like. His version of what Kaplan calls its quick sheets, and what Nobbin calls class summaries, and STC calls crunch time facts. And let me see if I can find this. I think I can. Let me close out this. Let me close out that. Let me close out this. Let me go back to this. Okay, I think I can do this. And let's briefly just show you what this looks like. No, I appreciate your patience. Here we go. Okay, so remember the pricing structure was, I think it's $30, and here's what this looks like in terms of, hold on, let me go get you guys back here. Okay, so here, if you want to spend the money, remember $16 gets you the PDF of the exam we just explicated, and the $30 gets you the exam and the class notes. And so here are the class notes, and what Brian does is kind of a version of what Dean did with explication, right? He goes over the sales literature stuff, goes over issuing, and gives you a little overview of that. That's the $30. There's Goldman Sachs. There's an underwriting, and so I just want to show you what that looks like. And that would be, there's 80, I think the exam is like 30 pages. You can see here, this is 85 pages. And then remember the last version is for the, let me see if I still have that going on. Stop share. Share screen. And this was the version. Remember, so we just did the practice exam, which is diagnostic. And if you want to get that, the answer key and rationale as a PDF, it's $17 on the TestGeek site. I'll have a separate thing where I tell you how our collaboration is going to work. I just showed you the study notes. So for the $32 with Brian, that's the 20% discount. It's 40%, but he put in Google 20. It ends up being $32. And that gives you the notes I just showed you. And then if you want Brian's in full paid supplement, that's everything. The practice exam, the answer key, the study quick note things I just showed you, and his videos of the entire Series 7, what his supplement, that's only $80. So if you're going to buy a supplement, I think that's a pretty good investment. All right. So like, share, subscribe, and I will see you next time. And if you're under 66, let me know, because I'm planning on doing the same thing with Brian's 66 practice final, his study notes, and his supplement as part of our collaboration. So give me thumbs up, thumbs down. If you want to think I should continue the collaboration into the 66, because that would be next, because that's where you're heading, right? All right, guys, study hard. And like I say, I'll see you Tuesdays for uploads. I respond quickly to any comments, and it'll be a while before there's another practice exam on 7. Bye-bye.